Welcome to SCBWI Carolina's Book Fairies First Look. I'm your host, Micki Bare. Today, it is my honor to welcome picture book author Anna Ouchchy. Anna is a children's book author and former teacher. She loves writing picture books that inspire wonder about the natural world or make kids laugh. Her articles and stories have appeared in Highlights magazine, and her first picture book, I Don't Wanna Hibernate, came out this month. Anna lives in Wilmington, North Carolina, with her family and a very spoiled cat named Spooky. Welcome, Anna, and congratulations on your debut picture book.
Thank you so much, Micki, and thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, we're so excited to talk to you. But before we begin, let me tell our viewers a little bit about I Don't Want to Hibernate. As snow gently blankets the land, the groundhogs prepare for their long, snuggly hibernation. But little Tess is wide awake. Tess's parents try everything to get her to sleep, but she knows every trick in the book. When mommy and daddy fall asleep without her, will Tess be able to stay up all winter? Or will she snore her way through Groundhog Day? Join Tess in this wintry bedtime story, perfect for readers who are wide awake when the rest of the world is sleepy. And this is such a sweet and relatable book, and I love the rhythmic style. So let's start though with a little bit about you. What is one little known fact that you would like to share about yourself?
Well, as a kid, I loved tongue twisters. And then as a teacher, I often used tongue twisters with my students. I had ESL students, and I wouldn't use them with my beginners, of course. That would not have been nice. But I used them with my more advanced students, and they really enjoyed saying the tongue twisters. So I have a tongue twister actually that relates to my book. And my tongue twister is because a groundhog and a woodchuck are the same thing, right? So my tongue twister is how much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? Do you want to say it with me?
I will try.
How much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a
If a
woodchuck could
woodchuck
chuck
could
wood?
chuck wood.
So, by the way, I wanted to know the answer to this question. So I Googled it and I found out that there was actually a wildlife biologist who tried to answer this question. And he measured the volume of a woodchuck burrow. And he found that if the hole was filled with wood instead of with dirt, a woodchuck would have chucked about 700 pounds of wood. So I thought that that was interesting.
So, does this tie into, I feel like it ties into somewhat with the rhythm of the book because it's very melodic and kind of poetic.
Yeah, with the rhythm. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's written in rhyme and meter. So it's definitely very rhythmic. And I'll talk a little bit about that later on, about kind of the process and how at one time it was a little bit too rhythmic, actually.
So, why did you start writing for children?
So when I was a kid, I had the good fortune of being read to a lot, mostly by my mom. And I had my favorite picture book, and it was The Billy Goat's Gruff. And she had to read it to me. My poor mom. She had to read it to me over and over and over again. And I had it memorized. She actually thought I learned to read at like 2 years old because I could say every word, but really I just memorized the book. And when I had my own kids, we also had our favorite picture books, and I read to them a lot and read the same books over and over again. But it really wasn't until I became an elementary school teacher that I really sort of widened my breadth and my understanding of picture books because I did so many read alouds with my students. So I learned about genres like picture book biographies and wordless picture books and rhyming picture books about science and history and lyrical picture books that can make you cry. I mean, just all the different things that picture books could be. And at some point, I started thinking maybe I could do this myself. And then I started thinking, so if I was going to write a picture book, what sort of things would I want to share with children? What sort of things from myself? And I decided that the most important things that I wanted to get across was my love for nature and my wonder about the natural world, and also just a sense of joy and whimsy that I wanted to share with kids. And I wanted to do all of this through beautiful and rhythmic language if I could. So I joined SCBWI, right? That's always the first step, and started learning about craft. And I joined a critique group as well. And I wrote just a ton of really bad, clumsy drafts that I had the idea and I knew what I wanted to get across, but the execution was just not there. And then finally, I started writing some better drafts. And now, many years later, here I am.
So what was the inspiration for this particular book?
So, the biggest inspiration for this book was my kids. When they were little, they never, ever wanted to go to bed. And they would try every single excuse so that they didn't have to. So it was like, I'm not tired. Or it was, my stuffed animals will be lonely if I go to sleep. Or I need another bedtime story. Or I need another warm cup of milk, or whatever it was. They would just find all of these excuses. So I came up with the idea of a young animal who didn't want to hibernate, just like my kids didn't want to go to bed. And at first, I thought that animal would be a bear. But when I started doing research, I found that groundhogs are true hibernators, meaning that they hibernate all winter and they don't wake up at all. And so I thought, why not make this book about a little groundhog instead of a bear? And another inspiration that I had was all of the groundhogs that I would see when I was growing up, when I would visit my grandparents' farm. And there were just groundhogs everywhere. My grandpa hated them because they ate all the veggies out of the vegetable garden and they dug these great big holes. And when he was driving around on the tractor, he had to be careful of these holes so that he didn't drive into one and break an axle. But I really love these little groundhogs. I thought that they were very cute, with their little chubby bodies and their big teeth. And I secretly wanted a groundhog as a pet when I was little.
Well, now you already talked a little bit about your journey to publication, but give us a little bit more of the details. Like what is it like to really go from getting that idea, going to SCBWI, joining and getting involved, and then the actual development of the book once you got to that manuscript that was going to become this picture book.
Yeah, so I wrote the first draft of the manuscript in December of 2021. And I knew right away that I wanted it to be a rhyming story and I wanted it to have a refrain. But when I sent it to my agent, she was like, well, the idea is cute, but something is missing here. It needs some more beats, it needs some twists. And why does the little groundhog just suddenly change her mind at the end and decide she wants to hibernate after all? That doesn't really make sense. And why not include a tie-in to Groundhog Day? You've written this whole story about groundhogs, but there's nothing about Groundhog Day in it. And then finally, she said, the rhythm and the meter is just a little too regular and it's putting me to sleep. And not in a good way, not in a like bedtime story type of way, but this is a little boring. So I thought about this advice. And at first, I was just like, how am I going to do this? I really don't know how to put this into action. But I let it sit for a few weeks and I checked out a ton of mentor texts from the library. And I looked at how different authors varied the meter and the rhythm and did different things with rhyming picture books. And finally, I got some new ideas and I was ready to revise. And I did put into effect my agent's advice about including that twist at the end and putting in the tie into Groundhog Day at the end as well. So that's in there now. And I varied the rhythm by putting in some onomatopoeias that are in a different meter from the rest of the book. And it does sort of mix it up and Just I think it adds more interest to it, and you're sort of on your toes waiting for those onomatopoeias. So can I read a little bit from my book to show you what I'm talking about?
Absolutely, because that is an excellent point. When you're using the onomatopoeia, it actually kind of jumps out at you in these little parts of the book, and it's just so well timed. So yes, please do read for us.
Sudden snowfall, icy air, cozy burrow dug with care. Three prepare for winter rest. Mommy, Daddy, little Tess. Yawning parents tuck her in, pull up blankets to her chin. Close your eyes. It's cold. It's late. I don't want to hibernate. Bedtime books will do the trick. Look, your favorites. Take your pick. Daddy reads until snore, snore, tiptoes out and shuts the door. Suddenly, a thumpy thump. Boing, sproing. Jump. I'm not tired. I feel great. I don't need to hibernate. Here's some cocoa, warm and smooth. So relaxing, sure to soothe. Don't you budge now, not a peep. Tess, I mean it. Go to sleep. Close to midnight in the gloom, crash, bang, boom. Patch is lonely, so is Kate. They won't let me hibernate. And it goes on, and she tries other tricks.
I love it. So this is kind of it. What's really cute about it is I feel like that it can be used in different ways. Of course, the whole go to sleep thing, but how can caregivers, educators, and librarians use this book with young children?
So, for caregivers, I think this is a really good bedtime story, especially for those kids who don't want to go to sleep. It rhymes, and I think rhyme can be both predictable, but also sometimes surprising. And so, one thing that the caregivers can do is to stop before the last word of a line and see if the kids can predict what's going to come next. You can also have your kids say the refrain with you. You can stop right before the word hibernate every time it's coming up, and you can ask your kids to supply that word. So that's really good for vocabulary development. And I think educators and librarians can use this book too to introduce the topics of hibernation and Groundhog Day. So when I was a teacher, I was always looking for good read alouds for Groundhog Day. And there are some out there, but they're not a lot. So I think that this one could be an addition to that. And then for hibernation, that topic actually ties in with several of the North Carolina essential standards for science for the early grades. And so that would work as well.
Oh, I love it. So what's next? Do you have new writing projects in development?
I have a lot of writing projects in development. I have about 50 some manuscripts
Wow.
that I have written, and some of them have gone out and not sold, and some of them are waiting to go out. So fingers crossed for the next one.
Nice. I know it's kind of like something that writers do. We have all these little projects surrounding us and kind of put them out there when they're ready. And of course, we want to stay in touch. How can caregivers, educators, librarians, and others stay up to date with your publications and events?
Well, I have a website. It's just www.annaouchchy.com. So that's a good way. There's a contact form on my website. I'm also on Instagram. I'm on Twitter/X a little bit, but I'm more on Instagram. So that's a good way. And I'm also on LinkedIn.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Anna. And again, congratulations on the release of I Don't Want to Hibernate.
Thank you so much, Mickey, and thank you for having me.